The sun hung low over Dusty Creek like a blood orange, casting long shadows across the weathered planks of the saloon. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and the bitter scent of cheap whiskey. A dozen pairs of eyes turned toward the door as it swung open with a creak that seemed to echo through the entire establishment. Clint Westwood stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dying light. He was a man of few words and fewer expressions, his face carved from the same granite as the mountains that bordered the town. His hat sat low over eyes that had seen things most men couldn't imagine, and his weather duster bore the stains of 1,000 miles of hard riding. But it wasn't Clint who drew the laughter. It was what stood behind him in the street. "Is that a mule?" someone called out, and the saloon erupted in guffaws. Clint said nothing. He never did when silence would serve him better. He walked to the bar with the steady gait of a man who'd walked through hell and come out the other side, his spurs jingling with each step. The bartender, a portly man with sweat stains spreading across his shirt like ink blots, slid a glass toward him. "Whiskey," Clint said. His voice was gravel and smoke. Behind him, the laughter continued. Big Jake Thornton, a cattle rustler with a reputation for cruelty and a bounty on his head in 3 territories, slapped his knee. Clint Westwood, the great gunslinger, reduced to riding a mule. "What happened, old man? Your horse finally wise up and run off?" The men around Jake's table roared with approval. They were his crew, 5 hard cases who'd follow him anywhere as long as the money kept flowing. They'd been terrorizing Dusty Creek for weeks, taking what they wanted, when they wanted it. The sheriff had tried to stand up to them once. They'd found his badge nailed to a fence post 3 days later. Clint downed his whiskey in one smooth motion and set the glass down with deliberate care. "That mule's got more sense than most men I've met," he said quietly. "Present company included." The laughter died like a candle in the wind. Jake's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his hand hovering near the Colt at his hip. "You got something to say to me, old-timer?" Clint turned slowly, and for the first time, the men in the saloon got a good look at his eyes. They were blue-gray, cold as winter ice, and they held no fear. "None at all." "I said," Clint replied evenly, "you'd best sit back down before you make a mistake you won't live to regret." For a heartbeat, the room was still as a graveyard. Then Jake grinned, the kind of grin that never reached the eyes, and sat back down. "Ain't worth it," he muttered. "Not yet." Clint turned back to the bar. "Another whiskey," he told the bartender. Outside, the mule, a dusty gray creature with intelligent eyes and the patience of a saint, waited quietly. Her name was Prudence, and she'd carried Clint across more miles of desert and danger than most horses ever could. She wasn't fast, but she was steady, and Clint valued that above all else. That night, as the town slept, Jake and his men plotted. They'd been itching for a chance to show up the legendary Clint Westwood. And now fate had dropped the perfect opportunity in their laps. The next morning, the town awoke to find a challenge nailed to the saloon door. Noon. Main Street. Jake Thornton versus Clint Westwood. Let's see if the man on the mule can still draw. By noon, Dusty Creek was packed. Folks lined the street, whispering about the duel. Some bet on Jake, he was younger, faster. Others, remembering tales of Clint's past, quietly wagered otherwise. Clint arrived on Prudence, the mule's hooves thudding softly against the dirt road. The crowd chuckled again. Even now, the sight of a gunslinger on a mule was absurd. But Clint didn't flinch. His calm was absolute. Jake stood in the center of the street, hat tipped low, smirk in place. "You ready to lose, old man?" Clint dismounted slowly. "You talk too much." The sheriff, a new one, still green but brave, stepped forward. "On my count," he said nervously. 3, 2, 1. Before he even reached draw, Jake's hand flashed, but Clint didn't move for his gun. Instead, he whistled, a sharp, piercing note that cut through the dusty air. Prudence suddenly kicked, her powerful hind legs lashing out. The force sent a cloud of dirt, and Jake's revolver, flying from his grip. In the blink of an eye, Clint drew and fired, the bullet grazing the brim of Jake's hat and pinning it to the wooden post behind him. The street went silent. Jake stood frozen, staring at the smoking gun in Clint's hand and the calm expression on his face. "You should have listened," Clint said, holstering his weapon. "A mule's smarter than you think." The crowd erupted, cheers, laughter, disbelief. Clint climbed back onto Prudence, tipping his hat to the stunned onlookers. "Let's go, girl," he murmured, and the mule trotted off down the street as the people of Dusty Creek whispered his name like a legend reborn. That night, Jake and his men left town under cover of darkness, their pride shattered. The townsfolk hung a sign above the saloon door the next morning that read, "Don't laugh at the man with the mule, he might be Clint Westwood." Weeks passed. Dusty Creek began to heal. The townsfolk started rebuilding the sheriff's office, and trade returned to normal. Clint never stayed long. He wasn't the kind to plant roots, but before he left something behind, a story. A story about strength that comes quiet, wisdom that walks on four stubborn legs, and the kind of justice that doesn't always come from the barrel of a gun. And somewhere out on the trail, beneath a sky full of stars, Clint patted Prudence's neck and smiled. "You showed them, girl," he said softly. They laughed, but they ain't laughing now. The mule flicked her ears and brayed softly, and the two of them rode on, legends fading into the horizon, where the desert swallowed the sun and stories never truly ended.